So here's the modules that we have available in field service. For service call management, this is kind of a typical traditional usage of it. So you can kind of think of technicians going out. You can dispatch them. They're either going out to handle repairs or preventative maintenance. And all of your billing is going to be done in sales order processing, so it directly integrates. And then it really integrates with the other four field service modules, as well as inventory and purchase order. It's also got a small integration to payroll and then manufacturing as well. So some of the challenges that I see with the service call module in GP is really about the mobile world and having technicians being able to update their information in more of a mobile fashion. So there are some things that I've looked into for that, and of course we do have the web client. You can deploy GP on the web client, and field service is available on that as well. So just reach out to me if you want to have a discussion or anything on that. And then we have the returns management module. So with that really works hand in hand with service call, where a tech can maybe receive a bad part in on a service call and then handle the RMA for the customer and through the RTV back to the vendor. You can also use this just with sales order and not even use the service call module as well. So you wouldn't have to use that. You can also take these return parts that you get them and send them through the depot management module and handle internal repairs and tracking costs and such on those. And then next we have the contract administration module, which I see that customers using this in a lot of different ways, and there's a lot of different interest in using just this one maybe and not using so much the others. And where they're looking at it is maybe to spread out billings and revenue recognition. Say they sell something in SOP and they want to be able to spread that out, they could look at using contract admin for it. The traditional usage of it, where you're using the whole suite, is really that you're maybe use a company that offers contracts for service, for example, on a copy machine. So you can, they might use contract admin and service call for those together. And then we have preventative maintenance, which really allows you to generate your service calls automatically and have them, it works with the contract. So maybe part of your contract is that you offer a yearly check for preventative maintenance on the equipment. So that'll work hand in hand with that. And then there's the depot management module, which really allows you to track internal repairs, and you can even put technician labor on there and pay them through the payroll module as well. So that can be more of a manual, non-integrated thing that you're doing with the depot, or you can have it work with the returns module. So I wanted to just give you some information and examples of persons that I've seen using each of the modules with a slide on each, but we're not going to spend a lot of time on these. We're going to hop to the demo pretty quickly here. But this documentation is available in the handouts, so if you're in live meeting and you go up to the little, I believe it looks like a few pieces of white paper, then you'll be able to download this and have that available as well. So service calls, you can offer service calls on, say, a copy machine that's under warranty or under contract or not covered at all, and the customer would then be paying for it and billed through sales order. I've seen where they provide technicians for security services, medical transcription, repair and maintenance on ATMs, medical devices, pool and spa, electronics are some examples there. And then with the returns management, I see people using this without the rest of the field service, and this is just maybe you want to just handle customer returns in a more efficient way. So you can issue an RMA number and track it through to the vendor as an RTV. And there's a lot of different integration points as well to the other modules in the core GP. And then with contract admin, some examples is maybe an educational facility wanting to charge a customer for a course, but then they want to recognize the revenue over the same course period. So they might use contract admin to break out the billings and then also recognize the revenue appropriately. And then I've also seen companies that are providing contracts for subscriptions, cybersecurity, professional consulting services. It really could be used for a lot of different ways for depending on the business. And then we have preventative maintenance, which works hand in hand with contracts and service call to offer. Maybe a company sells a dishwasher and they might offer a service plan that includes a maintenance check on the dishwasher every year. So this just kind of automates that service call getting created so you can schedule and have a technician go out there. And then depot management, this can work on its own or with the RMA module where you're just tracking internal repairs and letting technicians put costs against that with their labor or whatever parts you consume and being able to track that. So that's a real quick overview of some of the functionality, and now we're going to talk about the demo. I am going to try to show how all of the modules pretty much work together with an example, but keep in mind that customers that might be using this necessarily aren't going to use all of them together. Some will, but some will just use pieces of it. And I'm not going to be able to show all the features, but I'll definitely try to show you as many as I can think would be relevant here. So let me just change to my sharing here. And going to bring up my Dynamics GP. So I'm using Dynamics GP 2015 here, and I'm on the field service navigation area over here. And what I've done is I have a piece of equipment that I have an equipment record created for over here if I go under service call and then equipment. And what happened was I actually, it's this serial number 8 for this item called copier. And actually what happened is you can have it set up where I did a PO receipt for a copier and it was serial number 8, and the system automatically created this equipment record for me, and then it assigned the customer ID as myself because I'm Fabricam. And so all I've done up to this point is just a PO receipt, and this is what I received from that. And now really I'll actually go back in there and show you a couple of features in here when we're looking at the equipment. You can set up vendor warranties or seller warranties. So for example, if the vendor should pay a certain percentage of parts or labor on service calls that come in, you can set those up. So for example, 90-day parts and labor, you'll see the vendor is supposed to pay 100% of parts and 100% of labor and the customer 0%. And that'll be 90 days from the install date, so the system will be able to calculate that for you. And then I also have, you can add a seller warranty that might end after the warranty of the vendor. In addition to that, you can have contracts that you create that will cover whatever service or pieces of it. And then you'll see here meter readings. So this is not a metered tracked item, but you definitely can track up to 5 meter readings for each piece of equipment. And you can have overages amount and have contract admin charge you for those. If I go into PM schedules here, this will be the preventative maintenance module, and I'm just going to click default here, and it's going to pull in this item's default schedule. If I look at what this is, it's really this event should occur every 3 months, and then this event should occur every 3 months. If I look at what those events are, this is diagnostics, and I'm saying that it's probably going to take about 3 hours worth of labor, and here's the cost. And I could also assign default parts or additional charges. And then the same for this PM200 event. It's going to use 2 hours typically, and it's a clean preventative maintenance. So I can also choose to do fixed every 3 months or floating. And floating just means that I'm not going to suggest a new service call for this until I'm going to have it based on the last service call's completion date. So maybe if it was supposed to happen in July, but it never got done or scheduled with the customer until August, I'm not going to suggest it until it's been 3 months from when it was done. And then I'll be able to see also this preventative maintenance history, which will show me service call numbers that were actually performed for those schedules. So now we're going into sales order, and Aaron Fitz has called me up, and they're going to buy one of my copiers. So I'm going to enter an invoice for Aaron Fitz here. And I'm selling the copier item. And it's for $3,500. And if we look at what serial number I'm selling that number 8, which is tied to my equipment number 8. And now I want to sell them a contract with this for service. So if I go to additional and then create contracts, I can get this contract created right along with the invoice. So I'm going to put in a PO number. The nice thing is you can have a lot of different settings for contract type. So some of them are setting coverage periods for the contracts. You can do what item you would like to have billed for in FOP, what are your GL accounts, do you allow discounts, and then you can also put in meters. So if I look at this, I would be able to say if this was a meter tracked item, my base is 40,000, but if you go to 40,001, you're going to have to pay 0.02 cents per click over that. And I've got 5 different meters I can charge and 4 different overages. So contract admin will be able to charge for those meter clicks that go over the base contract as well, if that's something that they need. And then here I can put in my period. This can cross over to years. I could do 36 months. I could do 3 years, 1 year. I'm just going to do 12 months. And then I'm going to have it start today, which is the 12th of April. And now I have my price book. So this contract uses its own pricing, not the sales order processing pricing. So I choose that there. And then I can give the customer a discount if I want. Here is where I say, what is the customer responsible for paying under this contract? So I'm going to say this is only for preventative maintenance. So I'm going to cover they're going to have to pay 100% of break fix type service calls, 100% of labor, and 100% of miscellaneous. But what I'm covering is all the preventative maintenance work, so they really shouldn't have to pay anything there. I can have billing be different than the contract coverage period, so I can change that to whatever terms I want. Frequency, I can do a bill every month, once a year, every couple of weeks. I'm going to do this every 6 months, so I'm going to get 2 bills for this contract, and I'm going to have the billing be on the first of the month. Liability type is really how do you want to recognize your revenue. So I can do straight line, which is what anyone who's not using service call in conjunction with their contracts would definitely want to use straight line. That's just going to be like, say it was a $1,000 contract and I divided it by 12 months, it would be $80 some that would get recognized over the course of each period. And so if I were to choose block time or retainage based on calls or metered, block time is like maybe the contract gives you 40 hours of service call labor. And if you've consumed 20 hours of that, then I'm going to recognize half of the revenue. Retainage would be a contract where, adding up parts and labor and additional charges, we're giving you $30,000 to spend on service calls. And once you hit that retainer, you're done with the contract. And then you can recognize revenue based on their consumption of that. And based on calls would be one kind of like, for Microsoft support, I believe we sell a 5-pack of calls. So maybe if you wanted to use the service call module to track your calls, your support tickets, you could recognize revenue based on how many of those 5 they had consumed. And then if it was meter tracked items like a copier and you were tracking meter clicks or kind of a subscription for copiers or a usage, you could use metered as well. But this is how do you want to recognize your revenue. So now I just need to click Save, and I would post my invoice. This audit trail report, I am going to print that because it's going to give me my contract number. If I come up here, here's my contract number, 2082. And if I quickly just go look at my piece of equipment, I just want to show you that it is now shows as owned by Aaron Fitz. So if we pull up the equipment number 8 here, you'll see that now the customer on it is Aaron Fitz, and the ship and install date have been updated as well. So that's showing that they now own it. So now when I go into my contract, I believe it was 2082. And just a tip for anyone that hasn't worked in these modules as well at all, if you pull the lookup in this window, you'll see that there's a lot of leading zeros, and I could select it here. But an easier way to do it is if you know the number is just to type 2082 and tab off, and it'll be able to pull it up without you having to type in the numbers. So I could make any changes. Here's the terms of it where I'm covering 100% of parts and labor and preventative maintenance. I have some options. I can make it an evergreen contract, which is just basically meaning it's going to keep on auto renewing when the terms are over. I can smooth the billing and smooth the revenue because I'm starting on the middle of the month, and if I want to smooth it out to more full periods, I can do that. And then if I want to say certain items are not covered, so if I want to say absolutely, even on preventative maintenance, this item here is not covered under the contract, I can put that on there. I can see profitability, so what are my service calls would be listed down here as I keep going, and how am I coming along as far as making money on this contract. I can take a look at the contract lines. This was automatically brought over from SOP, and you'll see I can add options such as maybe I want to do a 4-hour response time, and that adds a 10% increase on price, so you can see that the price changed a little bit. And then I can also assign preventative maintenance schedules. So if I come in here and do default, it's going to pull it from that equipment record and basically say that copiers preventative maintenance is covered under this contract. I can also see what is my revenue. So this is my suggested revenue. It's all unposted right now. As I post things, it's going to move down to the posted transactions. Other things in here, if I go into the detail, this is where I would say, this is a contract for $40,000 of service call retainer work, and I could put that, or $4,000, I could put that in here, and then as I build service calls against it, it would update the retainage consumed. And the same for if I was offering 5 support tickets, I could put in 5 calls here, or a block time of labor, like 400 hours. So those are all things I could use, and usually then, whichever they were using, they might do their liability to match with how they're offering it. But you can also customize this area per line, so you don't have to have all the lines the same. And you can have many lines on the contract. You can also cancel lines. So if I use the cancel line here, and I can put in a cancellation date. So maybe they want to cancel mid-year. So I can put in that cancellation date, and the system will suggest a prorated new price. And I can also do a flat amount, because I know if I cancel like my AT&T wireless service, I'm going to be invoiced actually for an amount, so I can put in whatever that flat amount is. Or you can do a return by marking the credit. If you've already invoiced them and you need to give them some money back for canceling early, then you can do that as well. And so you can also transfer contracts, and you can move lines from one contract to another. So with that, once we've got this set up, probably the next thing someone's going to want to do is do their billing. So you would go into contract billing, and I believe mine is supposed to bill on the 1st of May. So I will go down here and find this contract, and you see it's going to bill for about half of it with this invoice, $585. So I'll bill that. And I can see the sales order processing invoice number here. It's INVS 3062. And then the next thing that you probably would do, also monthly, would be, if you're not doing meter postings, is revenue recognition. So let's say that I want to recognize for periods 4 and 5, but for just that contract number. So I'm going to be doing about $90 a period, and I'll do both of them now and then just show you what that looks like. Here's my revenue recognition report. And it's just basically what this is going to do is create general journal entries. So if I go over to financials here and then go to general, and I'll just pull the lookup and find the latest liability transaction and show you that. So here's the one journal entry. If I click the show details button here, I'll see which contract it's referencing, and then the 100 here, it means line 1. And then you'll see that it's recognizing the $10 in discounts as well on here. So then those would be posted, and then your liability would be taken care of as far as revenue recognition. The next thing, or actually I'll pull up the contract again and I'll just show you how you can see the invoice from sales order processing. So if I go into contract lines here and click invoices, I can see that there's one invoice left to post, and here's when it's going to post. I can see my revenue. I've recognized 2 periods and I have this left. And then if I go into the header and then click the button to the right of contract number and invoice, I can see here's my sales order processing invoice. And looking at that, it'll reference the item number and the piece of equipment in the description. And up by document number, it's going to reference your contract number in the GL reference field. So that is just showing how it all integrates with sales order processing. So now I have, I'm in service call, and Aaron Fitz has actually called me up, and now they're having a problem with their piece of equipment. So when I come in here, I can click the New button, and that's how I get started. That's a little different than other modules in GP. So I would click New, and then I'm just going to pick my customer, change it to the address that this equipment is at. And when I pull the lookup here, it's going to show me the equipment that belongs at that location. So this is the one that we're going to be working on. I'm able to, let's say that they called in and we had some conversation about it, and that I can track that labor and I can make it billable to them, or I can just track it just to show time spent on the service call and not have it chargeable to them. But I can put notes here and just put their error number, and then here I can put in my time. It will automatically track it for you, but in this case we're not going to wait for that to happen. So now if I click on labor, I'm going to see that that hotline labor was automatically tracked for me. And in this case I do charge for that, but in a lot of scenarios you wouldn't. And then I would click hotline if I wanted to add more notes, and I would still have a record of what had been added there. I can assign a technician. So if I go here, I'll be able to see, who's assigned to this problem code or this item, and then this service area. And I could also add a problem code as well. I'm just going to assign John Wood. And now I can dispatch a technician just by clicking over here. And then I can also set an arrival time. And let's say that, I'm doing it a little early, but 12:40 is when they arrived. I automatically can have it so labor gets calculated for travel labor. You can turn those things on or off. You don't have to have them do that automatic for you. But if I go into the parts, let's just say that John Wood was working there and he realized that this part needed to be replaced. So I'm just going to tab through the line here. And you'll see I have an I line and an R line. You'll see my site defaulted as my technician's good site and then bad site for this return line. If I zoom back on a technician, you can have a good location and a bad location, and that just means it's like their truck stock, but good location means it's their good inventory, and then bad is usually returns. You wouldn't have to use site IDs for the technicians, but that's just how I have mine set up. So we're going to sell them a new replacement piece because I actually do have that in stock in my truck. If I didn't, quantity back order would automatically populate, and I could create a purchase order or transfer it from another location right from here just by using this create PO button. It automatically took it out of inventory right now. I have the reports turned off, but if I would have had them on, it would have just taken it right out, or it would have showed you the journals going. And here's my bad part that I'm going to take in. So I can just put a 1 for quantity sold, and then I'm getting prompted to create an RMA. There's a lot of different RMAs that you might pass that you might use. A repair and return is kind of meaning I'm going to get in the part, fix it maybe through the depot module, and then give it back to the customer. And credit means that I'm going to get the part in and I'm going to issue a sales order return for your account. And then replacement is I'm going to get the part in and then send you a new one. And then advanced cross ship is I'm not going to wait to get the damaged part in. I'm going to just send you out a new one right away, and then I'll get the other one when I get it. For this example, I'm going to do a credit type because we're just going to take the bad part in and we're selling them another one, so I'm just giving them a credit on their account. So I can click that, and then automatically the RMA module was updated here. You'll see the service call is linked right here, and I'll close this for now. So inventory automatically brought it, if we look at this transfer that was created, inventory automatically brought it into the text bad site. When my returns department goes and says, okay, now we have this part, this transfer will automatically ship, and it's not something that the user will have to do. But it is linked there for you to be able to see it and the RMA number. So now from this perspective, maybe I'm ready to complete my service call, so I'll just click complete. And I need to put a time here, and it'll automatically calculate the labor since that's the way I have it set up. If I want to see the totals, I can click here and see the total of my parts and labor. And then I can just click Ready Invoice. And at this point, the next thing I would probably do with this is just do service call billing. And here it would be, and I could go through and a $95 invoice would be created for the customer. So that is how that works. If I go back to that service call, the reason that it charged the customer and didn't use the contract, because you can see the contract is linked on here, is because it's not a preventative maintenance service call. And if I look at, say, these parts, click this little arrow next to extended price, the billable percentage is 100%. If it would be a preventative maintenance call, it would be 0%. That would have automatically defaulted in there. And the way that you can tell that is because this PM box would be marked, meaning it was preventative maintenance. And then when I had this contract on there, it would have known to not charge for it. So now we're pretty much done with that service call. We've billed it into sales order processing. And now we're going to look at the RMA that was created. So if I go into RMA entry update, I believe it was not this one. Let me see. It would have been 3017. So here's the one. You can see it's linked to the service call. So I'm ready to receive that in. So when I go to RMA receiving, that is me saying that now at my returns location, wherever that is, I now have that. So what's going to happen when I post this is it's going to just do a transfer, moving it from the technician's bad truck site to my return site ID. And here's just a report that can be printed with the document. And now when I go look at my RMA, this 3017, you can see it's now been received. If I click this little infinity icon by customer path, I now have a sales order processing return that was crediting the customer's account automatically. And then I can now decide what am I going to do with that. Am I going to just return that one to stock? If I just click return to stock, it's just going to put it in my warehouse stock or my warehouse site ID, because that's my default selling site. But I can click process and I can do something else with it. I can do an RTV, so return to vendor. I can scrap it, which is just going to take it out of inventory using the scrap accounts. Or I can send it to the depot module, either doing a quote first that I later would transfer to an open, or just straight to an open work order. I'm going to do an RTV, and then I'll click create, and then you can see it automatically brings up my RTV. Just like RMA types, I have different workflows for RTVs. So if I want it to be just a credit one where sending it to the vendor and they're giving me a payables credit memo, then I'll choose credit. Replacement, I'm going to expect a part back from them. Advanced cross ship is they're going to send me a new part. It'll create a purchase order automatically for a new part before I even ship the old one out. And then repair and return is I send it back to the vendor, but they fix it and then send the same exact one back to me. So they all have actions and workflows that happen with them. And in the slide deck, there is kind of charts that I included just to help with that. But for this, I'm going to change it to a credit type. So we're just going to use credit, and I'm going to roll it down to my lines. And then I'll choose a vendor. And so this one is ready for me to ship out. And when I ship this part back to the vendor, they're just going to give me a payables credit memo. So I'll click this Ready button at the top, mark the lines ready to ship, and I can also on my RMA click Ready to Close because this one is pretty much done from an RMA perspective. I gave the customer their sales order processing return and I got the bad part in, so I'm just going to click Ready to Close. And so now for the RMA, I could do RMA closing, and if I want in that screen, I can charge them for repair costs or a fee for restocking or whatever it is if I want. But from the RTV, and then that one's done. From the RTV perspective, I can just go ship that part out and click Post here. And here's a packing slip that I might want to package with it. See the packing slip? And then for that RTV, really at this point it's just a matter of closing it, but I will pull it up so that you can see that it created the payables credit memo for me. So if I click on this button next to credit, you'll see here's my payables credit memo that it credited my vendor account. And it references the RTV number there. So then that kind of, I had a piece of equipment, I sold the copier to Aaron Fitz, we did a contract for preventative maintenance. They called in and had a break fix service. We sent it through an RMA for the customer. We did an RTV for the vendor. And now I'm going to look at preventative maintenance service call to show you what they were covered under their contract. So if I go to routines and then preventative maintenance and PM generation, I have a lot of, I can generate it however I want, but I'm just going to do it for my one item that I had set up here. And it installed on 4/12, and it was a 3 months schedule. So I'm going to put this 7/31 just to make sure that it picks it up 3 months out. And I'll click Generate here. And now I can go under Transactions to Preventative Maintenance and PM Edit List. And here it's just suggesting these activities for this contract number and customer and item. And so if I want, I can say, they want to schedule the PM 200, but they don't want to do the PM 400, but I don't want it to regenerate again for that one. I can click Cancel on one of them, and then this one I can actually generate. And that will generate a service call for me, and it'll be on the equipment history that occurred. So if I pull up my call number 2226, so I'll go into service calls here. You can see that this one, if we look at the labor, you'll see that it's bringing in the 3 hours that event was supposed to take, but you'll notice that the prices are 0. And that's because if we click here, we'll see billable percentage is 0%, and that's because it's covered under the contract. And now I could do everything the same with this one and charge or handle the service call as I did the other one. So the last module that we really haven't looked at yet is the depot management. So under here, we're going to go to depot, and then I'll click on work order entry update. I could have had one created from the RMA. So back when we were on the RMA and we created an RTV, I could have actually had it go to work order and then either a quote or an open one. So that would be one way that these work orders would get created, and then the other way is just a manual one. So I'm just going to do a manual one here by clicking on the New button. And you'll see if it would have been from an RMA and the customer, it would have been listed down here. And so this is, what part am I repairing? So I'm going to choose, we're looking at this 100 XLG. It's going to be serial number 6 that we're working on. And then I'm able to track when do I expect it to be fixed, what date have I committed. And then if it's going to be issued out as a different outbound, maybe I'm going to reserialize it, or not, maybe it's going to be called a different item number after I repair it. I'm able to put that information in the outbound and have it come out as something else. I can put parts and labor and look at a schedule for the route that I have here. So if I look at the route 200, this is kind of, it's got different stations and then estimated times for each of the different options. For labor, we do have, so if, let's say John Wood here was going to put on 4 hours of labor for whatever he was working on, I'm going to put, let's see here, I'm going to change it to my 4/12/2017. Oh, I have to change that date first. So I'm going to change this to be my Fabricam date instead of this. And I'm going to say I started at 8 a.m. and I was done at 12, so it calculated 4 hours there. You can have it use payroll, so if I actually go into that little total expansion button, you can see here I've got it set up. The technician has an employee called Jay Wood, and then their pay code, and then department position. You can populate all this information or have it come from the technician. I can also put parts on there if I had used, let's say I was going to use a part here, and I'm just going to choose a location that I know I have some quantities, or actually I don't even in this location. It went to back order. So I can also have a PO linked to this and a transfer if I want to transfer from another location. So for right now, I'm just going to remove this, but we could do that in a different screen if we wanted to. And then so now it's just a matter of completing the work order, clicking on this little button, complete here. And then I can click Save. And if I go to do work order completion, so that's right here, I can mark it as complete. The other thing that I want to point out then, and it'll actually put it back into inventory as the other part number if it needs to, is that there is the integration to payroll. So if I go down here, and since I had that Jay Wood employee set up as a payroll employee, I can click Post Labor to Payroll and then choose a batch and put in my pay range. And that works for service calls too. It's not just for the depot labor. It's for all of them. And I can click Process, and then my report's going to come up and say what labor was added. So you can see that for the service call, I had labor as well. And then my payroll batch would have this information automatically. So that concludes the demo portion. So let me just go back here to my slide. So I just wanted to point out some of the modules that it integrates to, or all of them that I could think of. You can see there's a good list of the modules that it integrates to besides integrating amongst itself.